All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's the free for all. Call me about any topic. I'd like you to focus, if possible, either on what my main subject today is, which is going to be why are voters of color abandoning the Democratic Party. And it's basically the same reason that other working class, poor, and middle class Americans are leaving the party. If you want to address that, that's great. 240-363-7190 or anything I've discussed this week. I can't even remember my topics. I know we had a really big show in terms of audience on Tuesday, I believe it was. And Frank, that was about, it was about Cenk, right? Yeah, that really, for some reason, really captivated people. I think it hit the algorithm that YouTube uses somehow, maybe the title or something with Cenk Uygur in the title, and how he and Brianna Joy Gray went at it about force the vote and other issues. In any event, that program, if that animated you, if a topic that came up, you want to hit, I'd love to discuss that or any other issue that's on your mind. War with Ukraine's a big one, and that's going to make an appearance today when it comes to why the Democratic Party is losing its backbone right now, its spine. And, the polls show pretty close to a dead heat between Biden and Trump. And I think what you're seeing is more of those so-called country club voters, the soccer moms, whatever you want to call that cohort, is in fact moving towards the Democratic Party. You've seen the Dobbs decision on choice really, I think, has activated many of them to decide we can't keep having justices like Alito and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. And Gorsuch and Kavanaugh aren't even the most right wing, but they are ultimately part of that anti-choice group in the Supreme Court. So I think you're seeing those more highly educated, middle class to upper middle class, even to affluent voters, more and more becoming Democrats at the same time. Workers and those making less even than a decent middle class union salary are moving farther and farther to the Republican Party. So why is that happening? And Nate Cohen asked that question last week in the New York Times. By the way, you may be interested. You may notice I am not using a headset today. I am flying solo in that regard. I've gone commando. No, I am actually wearing underwear, but I am not flying with that headset on, and it feels really weird. I've got to tell you, from broadcasting, my broadcasting career going back to 2005, I believe, when I started doing the morning show on the old KRXA 540 AM, I always wore a headset. And I kind of made a decision recently. I was watching other YouTubers. I know I'm digressing here. It's not on Why is President Biden Losing Ground. We'll get there. I promise, folks. 240-283-7262 if you want to ground me. And I think I'll be able to do the calls even with the without the headset. I hope I can. That's all tested, so hopefully it'll work. Give me let's try it out. If you want to give me a jingle, 240-363-7190. I watched actually Jimmy Dore. I'm like noticing Jimmy never seems to wear a headset. He does take some calls. Usually they're bogus calls, they're funny calls, but he also has usually a sidekick with him. And that sidekick has got to be on the phone. I don't believe he's in the studio. If you watch the video, you can see they're not in the same room. It seems pretty clear. And he does play clips. So how does he do that without getting the feedback? That was the question I was having, because I got a live mic here. If I play a clip, aren't you going to hear the clip? Well, I have a directional mic. You can see it. It's that Shure. Those are really good. And yeah, apparently, and I've done some testing, you won't hear the double audio. So I'm optimistic. Let's try it out if you get a chance. 240-363-7190. Don't forget to click like, click subscribe. So a nice boost after that Tuesday program on Cenk and Brianna Joy Numbers consolidating a little bit after that, much to my disappointment. But we want to hit that algorithm and really see the numbers jump, because no one does this. No one does what I'm doing here, and I want you to be part of it, and I want more and more folks to join. And I think the political perspective is pretty unique too. No one really says, if you watch a lot of hosts, they kind of all say the same things. I mean, people like Pacman, Vosh, he is really some piece of work, that guy, and Cedar, they're all three cut out of the same cloth. They're all neo-lib, pro-Democrat, any blue will do type Dems. And you're even seeing Kulinski and his wife now, of course, Crystal Ball, moving in that direction as well. Yeah, you got to vote. You vote for Marianne Williamson. She's the best in the Democratic primary. Same with Cenk. But when it comes to the actual election, any blue will do. Now, obviously, I don't take that position. Neither does Jimmy. Neither does Brianna Joy. But I'm very prepared to call them out on when they become too anti-establishment, too reactive, especially Jimmy. I think Brianna Joy Gray and I have pretty similar views. She's a little more forgiving she's a little more of an embracer of the identity politics, and she may not agree with some of the explanations I give for why is President Biden losing ground among Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and other non-voters. Hey, if you're a non-white voter, give me a call. Let me know what you think in response to this question when I'm live. 240-363-7190. Or just go ahead and post it in the conversation here. I think I've got it up. Yeah, the chat. So you should. I was just looking. That's why you saw my eyes glance to the, I guess as you're looking, would that be to the right? I don't even know how it works. I guess to your left, as this is as streaming on your computer dial. So it's not, to my way of thinking, this is not the murder of Roger Ackroyd. It is not a real mystery. The answers are very, very clear. Although Nate Cohen doesn't seem to agree with me, or maybe I don't agree with Nate Cohen, he should probably just go back and read his newspaper, because the answer why so many people of color, voters of color, are moving to the Republicans or just simply away from the Democratic Party is hardly not susceptible to an answer. And the answers are clear. They are absolutely clear. We'll get right into it. But before we do, just want to show this. This is what Cohen says. There's no easy answer for this relative weakness that shows up in the voting and polling, and there might never be one. And then he goes on to say, Cohen does, this is from the 15th in the New York Times. After all, we still don't have a definitive explanation for why Trump made big gains among white working class voters in 2016 or Hispanic voters in 2020. Well, that's just, it's just BS. And I bring this up. I've talked about this a lot, but I think it's really important to respond to what the New York Times is saying here. Because those of you who read it, and I know so many people, if it's in the New York Times, they believe it. If it's written in the New York Times, then that's like the gospel. We know exactly why. And we've known since 2016. In fact, the New York Times told us this article, and I remember reading this when it came out, and I thought, yes, I'm so glad that they did this. This really reflects well on the, whatever you want to call the paper of record. It really does, that they're actually giving us a on the scene, you are here explanation for why Trump won, why Hillary lost. This is 2016, right after the election, a couple of weeks later. And it says it's by Sabrina Tavernise. I was interested by that because I had thought, and of course it is by Sabrina Tavernise. It says it's by her. But I was a little surprised to see it was by Sabrina Tavernise. And the reason I say that is because I thought it was by Cheryl Gay Stolberg, who is another reporter at the New York Times. And she's kind of more like an editor now. She's been around there for a long time, my age, I think she's exactly my age. And I thought she had written this article, but now that I think back on it, she had written subsequently about it and kind of analyzed Tavernise's outstanding reporting. So she tells you, Sabrina Tavernese tells you exactly why voters of color in 2016, I mean, we're not even looking at what's happening now. It was already happening as of 2016. So you see the folks there in that iconic barbershop, the iconic black barbershop, uppercuts in Milwaukee, a state. Milwaukee, this is the largest city in a state where, I believe it's large, I believe it's bigger than Madison, the state that Trump defeated Hillary, right? One of those three upper Midwest or two plus Pennsylvania along with Michigan that Trump was able to win, that won the election for Trump and that lost it for Clinton. So Justin Babar is in that, I think that's how you pronounce his name, sitting in his center seat there. He's one of the customers. He voted for Trump. He voted for Trump. I mean, are you surprised? We'll get into why that happened. And he's not the only one in that barbershop who didn't vote for Clinton. In fact, as far as I can tell from reading this article, none of the barbers, none of the customers who were interviewed in 2016 voted for Hillary Clinton. This is in the state we know. This explains exactly why the Democrats lost in 2016 and almost lost in 2020. And isn't it a surprise? I mean, are you a little bit surprised? I mean, Hillary Clinton was Barack Obama's hand-picked successor. Obama bypassed his vice president. He told old Joe from Scranton, don't run. It's Hillary's turn. That's what Obama's wife said. That's what Michelle said. It's Hillary's turn. It's time for a woman. The Secretary of State of the first black president, Hillary Clinton. She couldn't win she couldn't get they did win. She did win the vote of Milwaukee, but so many people just sat it out. And this is, it's quite astonishing, even now. But it really doesn't astonish me. But you would think if you read the New York Times, if you spoke like people I have on my show, they cannot understand it. How can people vote for Trump? How could this happen? What's going on here? He's so bad. He's a racist. He's a white supremacist. He's a fascist. How could this happen? Well, it's not really a surprise. They tell you. It's not like a mystery. There aren't a whole bunch of different possible theories that we have to go through, and there's pros and cons. Cedric Fleming tells you. He tells you exactly why. And he wasn't happy. Okay, this is so funny the way this conversation goes. So one of the barbers, Cedric Fleming, says, we got a gangster in the chair now, meaning Trump. Sounds like he really hates Trump. Sounds like all the anti-Trump rhetoric must have really resonated with Mr. Fleming. Oh, and by the way, a lot of the argument for why Trump won Wisconsin was there was voter suppression, voter turnout was down. That's not what, that's true that voter turnout was down. There's no suppression in Milwaukee. It's a black-run city. The voting machines were there. People could vote. Nobody said they didn't vote because it was hard to get to the polls or there was a long line. That wasn't the explanation. In fact, what's so ironic about this to me is that the barber who says we got a gangster in the chair now actually didn't vote for Clinton. If he's that upset about Clinton, why did he not if he's so upset that Clinton lost because we've got this gangster, we've got to say, well, he must have voted for Hillary, but he didn't. In fact, despite saying we've got a gangster in the chair, I don't even feel bad, Fleming said. Milwaukee is tired. Both of them were terrible. They never do anything for us. Anyway, that's really important. Okay, so Cohn says, why are Democrats losing voters of color? Because they don't do anything for us. It's what more? I mean, what could be clearer? How can the New York Times even possibly question, say, oh, we don't know? Of course they know. The voters told them. And it wasn't just Cedric Fleming. He wasn't the only person they interviewed. We're going to go, and we're also not going to just go with anecdotal or person on the street. So remember, Fleming's a barber. I'm sorry. So how did those barbers vote? Fleming even said, we got a gangster. I don't even care. All 4 had voted for Obama, but only 2 could muster the enthusiasm to vote this time. I don't know if Cedric Fleming voted or not. Maybe they tell you later in the article. We'll get through it. But in this election, only 2 even got up to vote. And 1 voted for Trump. No, I'm sorry. 1 voted for Clinton's Democrat, Senator Bernie Sanders, who would have won, by the way. He would have won. And the other voted for himself. Okay, so none of the barbers voted for Hillary. So we know Fleming didn't vote for Hillary because he was a barber. And he's a barber. And he, in fact, said Trump's a gangster. I don't care. I'm not voting for Hillary. It doesn't matter. They don't do anything for us. This is why Democrats lose. And in fact, it's not just that they don't do anything. They do bad things too. They do, which we're going to get into. It's not just about the identity politics. I know that's what Democrats want. And in fact, we're going to end. We're going to talk a little bit about Jimmy Dore, who I was critical of in his interview with Dr. West, and I still am, and I think we have to vote for Dr. West. And I didn't like the way Jimmy conducted it, but he made a point that the September 15 article really points, and the answers to it, why voters of color, Black, Latino, Hispanic, whatever term you want to use, Asian American, why they're even Native American. The Republicans have made some gains among Native American voters. So the question then is why we need to support Dr. West. He's the best candidate for all American, virtually all, maybe not the billionaire class. I would even posit for the billionaire class. I mean, they live on the same planet that's burning up right now because of both parties, because of duopoly. So back to the barbershop, though. Let's get back to uppercuts, because I think this article is so valuable. I'm so critical of the New York Times all the time. I think that, what Cohen says is just a load of crap. I mean, how could you have to know why the Democrats are losing voters of color. I mean, the Times reported, but this is exceedingly valuable information that they're providing us. So at Uppercuts, let's get through this. The politics of Uppercuts. Black Barbershop, the iconic Black Barbershop. I think there was even a movie, was it called Barbershop? With Cedric the Entertainer. I remember him. And there's one of the barbers here is that barber Cedric, who called Fleming, who called Trump a gangster, but still didn't vote for Hillary. So who was the big kahuna? Well, unsurprisingly, in 2016, it was Barack Obama. Politics comes back to one man, African American man, a black man. I say African American. His father was, in fact, African American, or African. His father was African. His father was Kenyan, not an American. Did not move to the United States. His father was, I guess, I don't know if he's still alive, Kenyan professor. His mom an American. Talk of politics, and it inevitably comes back to one man, Barack Obama. Obama's elections infused many here with a connection to national politics they had never before experienced. Well, it makes perfect sense that they would feel that way because he's black and they're black, and there had never been a black president. So, of course, there's going to be hope. He understands the challenges we face. He understands the racism. He understands how it's more challenging for us to get jobs. So we have to be better just to get our foot in the door. The generational either poverty or the incredible effort it takes to make it just out of the working class if you're an African American. And so there's a hope that he got that, he would get that, he would rule, he would govern in a manner that led to a better quality of life. And guess what? That didn't happen. Obama's policies did not result in an appreciably better life for people in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a rough and tumble city, a victim of deindustrialization, I believe a majority black city, or a city with a very large black population. Obama's policies, the Democratic Party's policies, did not make life better for the people in that city. And that's why they don't vote Democratic. That's why so many are leaving the party. It's not a mystery. It's easy. And so the answer to how to get them back is easy too. Pursue policies that lead to a better quality of life. Is that what Democrats have done in the past 3-4 years? I would say no. Let's look at what, now again, Cedric Fleming, a font of wisdom, a font of critical information, why the Democrats are losing so many poor, struggling, and working class voters. And it doesn't, and forget about of color, just period. Voters, period. You talk to, I know people who are viewers or who are guests on my program who can't understand this, who I really, they can't understand why Democrats are losing. I don't know what to tell them. At some point I start throwing up my hands because the truth is right out there. Again, these just similar kinds of questioning from people who are global warming skeptics or global warming deniers, and they throw up every roadblock they think may make some sense. It's not a mystery. It's getting hotter because we keep pumping more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, period. Democrats are losing voters of color because their policies don't make their lives better. It's that simple. And if you think that's too general, right? Oh, well, what does that mean? Life's better. What are they supposed to do? Well, here's what the barber, a small business man, has to say. Well, make us loans available to us so we can expand. Let's have a 401k, some kind, because he's a business person. He doesn't have that option. He doesn't have a 401k. It's very, very hard. I know when I was running the radio station, when I was operating it, it's so friggin' hard. You don't have any kind of retirement plan, nothing. And what else does he say is a big issue? Health insurance. Wasn't health insurance supposed to be the Democrats' issue? Didn't Obama bring us Obamacare? Well, it didn't help out Fleming, at least not as of 2016. He lost his coverage after his divorce 3 years and struggled to find a policy he could afford. But it was too expensive at $300 a month. Well, you know what? Health insurance has gone up since then. It's not cheaper. And yes, you can get it, I guess, on the, I guess there's Badger Care, right, in Wisconsin? But still, the price keeps going up, up, up. There's all the deductibles. There's all the bills. Family member recently diagnosed with cancer. That member has really good insurance and in a liberal state, a progressive state. And while he's dealing with the chemo and all the pain associated with this, they're getting bills, right? They're getting hit by insurance bills. When you're trying to focus, this is a middle-class person. This is not a rich person. This is somebody who pretty much lives paycheck to paycheck. Finally got out of the hole of credit card debt. Able to start saving for retirement. And now hit with all these bills. I guess Obamacare wasn't any kind of a savior. This is why people are voting Republican. This is why people aren't voting Democratic. It's very, very clear. So economics is the biggest issue. You didn't hear one word from the folks in that barbershop about racism, about, the Republicans this or that, Trump's a gangster. But it didn't cause them to vote for Hillary. All right. So economics is a huge, huge part of this. It's a huge factor. It's not the only factor. And another enormous factor, and I'm going to get back to economics again, especially in the Midwest. By the way, join me, 240-363-7190. You can see the phone number right there on the screen, 240-363-7190. I want to test out the system, see how the audio is without my, and you know what? I thought I was going to really miss those ear headsets, and now it's kind of cool. I like not wearing them. I've gotten comfortable. It only took me a little less than 30 minutes. So what else? What other issues are hurting Democrats? And I don't, I think it's fair. It's very, very fair to say it's not just these issues are hurting Democrats with voters of color, but they're also with working class. And remember, Cohn said, we don't really know why. Well, no one's really sure why all these white working class people are voting for Trump and for the Republicans, or not voting for the Democrats. And Hillary's answer was they're deplorable. Remember? Oh, they're deplorable. That's all. There's nothing we can do. Well, Glenn Greenwald wrote an article. Now, a lot of people don't trust Glenn Greenwald, whatever. I can't deal with that. But he sources his argument extraordinarily well. And I was kind of rushing to get on the air to do this live stream, so I didn't go back to the original source, which is a Boston University article, scholarly article. But I had previously read that article, and I previously cited to it. So Greenwald wasn't simply, something new, presenting something new that I hadn't vetted. I vetted this argument, and he's spot on. So the Clinton book tour, she's explaining why she lost. It was Russiagate. It was the Bernie bros were so upset and they stayed home because they were sore losers. It was the deplorables. It was the media. They write the laptop, right? Because I guess, wasn't there some laptop or something? I know the Hunter Biden laptop is big now, but it was Huma Abedin's husband. I forget the guy's name. He had a different last name. He had a laptop. He was some sort of Democratic representative of some sort. And then, the Comey, James, was it Comey? Yeah, came out with some story about, sent a letter, we got to look at this laptop to Congress. So she comes up with all these different, excuses for losing to Trump. But the real reasons were we just heard, no one said anything about a laptop, right? In that barbershop. No, that wasn't in anyone's mind. That's why we're not voting for Hillary. Her warmongering and the economics were what caused the Democrats to lose that election. It's why voters of color and working class voters and white working class voters, and we can't say this enough because the Democrats haven't changed in any way. They haven't changed now. Now, by the way, the Democratic policies that alienate working class voters, it's not just a matter of them being politically toxic, right? It's not just that being corporatist. It's not just that being, quote, pro-free trade, not doing anything, having a neoliberal approach to healthcare. In other words, we're going to give more power to the health insurance companies. We're not going to have the government take over the distribution of healthcare, the distribution and the production. That's the word I'm trying to come up with here. It's not just that they embrace unpopular policies. These are objectively bad policies, right? The Obamacare, and I was somewhat on the fence at the time. I think we have to admit now it was a mistake. I think we have to acknowledge now this was a mistake for a lot of reasons. Obama should have been out there front and center fighting tooth and nail for some kind of universal single payer coverage. And if he couldn't get, with the 60 Democratic votes in the Senate at that time, if he couldn't get it, which he couldn't have, I think he couldn't have, Joe Lieberman said he wasn't going to give it to him, then you got to be fighting to unseat Joe Lieberman, unseat Max Baucus, and also expand Medicare. so that it kicks in at 55, right? So do everything possible to expand universal single-payer coverage in some way, even if you can't get it to everyone. But Obamacare was a mistake. It did not improve healthcare, and it was not a great policy. It was maybe slightly better than the status quo. I'm not going to even say that for sure. Endless war, another terrible policy that the Democrats embraced. It was bad politically. It continues to be harmful politically, but it also is just wrong. It's immoral. It's harmful. It's bad. So this study by Boston University said that the Bush-Obama wars were a big reason Hillary lost, particularly in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, 3 states that Clinton lost. There's a significant and meaningful relationship between a community's rate of military sacrifice and its support for Trump. Those military families, which include many African Americans, were so harmed by the endless war, right? It had been going on in 2016 since 2002, right? Finally, we got out of the Middle East pretty much, although not completely, when Biden took office. But now we're back in another one. We're embroiled in Ukraine, where we have sent some advisors. It's not like we're totally out of it. It's not like we're just giving them arms, which is, as we've pointed out on this program, is not popular. It's not good politics. It's hurting. It will hurt Biden in the general election, because military families especially don't like it. But more broadly, poor, struggling, and working class Americans don't like it. And why would they? We're funneling billions of dollars overseas in a conflict that they can't really get why we have as Americans, any real interest. And they also understand intuitively that our empire is not helping them, hasn't made their lives better, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in the Middle East. It's not making life better for them. So, in fact, it's making life worse. They're losing family members. Their children are serving tour after tour. It's a terrible thing that we're doing, and they get it. This is why Democrats are losing. Let's just get back to it's no mystery. It's not hard to understand. Nate Cohn worries us far too much and only comes up with theories rather than definitive answers, although he kind of gets something right, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now I want to get back to economics. Specific, because we started with just that was the micro view in the barbershop, where African American customers and barbers talk about the challenges that they're facing that Democrats haven't helped them confront. And that's why none of them, not one, voted for Hillary. And obviously that dynamic is continuing, and that's why we're seeing Democrats hemorrhage support among voters of color. By the way, 240-363-7194 to join me. Love to talk to you. And please click like and click subscribe. Back to the macro view, right? So we focused economics, Midwest, Milwaukee, barbershop. Can't be more micro than that, right? That's right down to the street level. Bigger picture, Midwest. Democrats lost the most in Midwestern factory towns. Gee, what a surprise. The party struggles in communities that saw declines in manufacturing and union jobs and health care could more than offset its gains in metro areas. Now, this article is from 2020. This is in the New York Times. Jonathan Martin. Now, what's so interesting about that, to me, is that healthcare emerges as an issue in 2020, which the Democrats barely held on, right? They did a little better than people thought. They held on to the Senate, and they didn't lose the House of Reps by much. And Biden did win the White House. So, yeah, they did a little better than, they did better than people thought they would do, right? So maybe those issues didn't hurt as much as people thought. But we're still, right now, 3 years plus later, or I guess 2 years. Okay, so this is before the midterms. This is 21. I thought it was 20. So this is 21. And Jonathan Martin is examining examining the numbers here in the New York Times. And specifically how Democrats, even after 2020, when Democrats won, right? They won the House. No, they lost the House. They barely kept the Senate ultimately, and they won the White House in 2020. Even after that positive result, relatively better than expected result, between 2012 and 2020. And 2012, by the way, was not a great election for the Democrats. Remember, Obama lost everything then. He lost the Congress, 2012. Maybe kept the Senate. Definitely lost the House. The share of the Democratic presidential vote in the Midwest declined most precipitously between 2012 and 2020 in counties that experienced the steepest losses in manufacturing and union jobs and saw declines in healthcare. Now, isn't that interesting? Because, and remember what the barber said, Cedric. He said flat out, give us health care. The failure of Democrats to embrace universal single-payer coverage, to fight tooth and nail, to talk about it at every opportunity. Remember, Biden did talk about it. He said, I'm going to veto it. That's why Democrats are losing. And it's ironic to me because wasn't Obamacare supposed to be this wonderful policy that would lead to sort of a permanent Democratic majority, a realignment, if you will, kind of like Obama's hero, Ronald Reagan, brought about? He was a transformational president, according to Obama. And I think Obama was hopeful. Maybe Obamacare would bring about that same transformation. Did not do so. In fact, many communities that lost saw declines in their healthcare coverage, notwithstanding Obamacare. So those are the folks who are voting for Republicans, who are voting for third parties, alternatives, anyone but the Democrats. And it's really interesting to me. It's really valuable to see how that analysis by Martin lines up perfectly with what the individuals were saying in that barbershop. We need health care. It's no mystery why the Democrats are struggling. It couldn't be more clear. It couldn't be more clear. All right, so returning or going, to the text of our man Nate Cohn's article, Why Are Democrats Struggling? Right? That's the title of his piece. That's what we're focusing on right now. Why is President Biden losing ground among Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and other non-white voters? Just from what? A week ago. Why? That's the question. And he does not answer it. I just did. I just told you exactly why. But in the end, he gives you a couple clues. He has 5 theories. I'm not going to even it's not worth it to me to get into one of them. But I think this theory is really, really interesting. Democrats are too far to the left. This theory is brought to you by Democratic centrists and is grounded in important fact. There are many non-white Democrats who self-identify as moderate, even conservative. Many hold conservative views on issues like opposition to same-sex marriage. All right. True. But what is so interesting about this theory is what Cohn does is he identifies identity politics, same-sex marriage, trans rights, white privilege arguments. He identifies those identity politics, structural racism. He identifies those identity politics arguments as presented by leftists, as argued by leftists. And it's kind of BS. Those are arguments that elites use to drive an enormous wedge between economic progressives on economics and working class voters. Rather than talk about economics, the Democrats talk about these identity politics issues that allows them to avoid higher taxes on themselves. That helps them avoid tariffs that reduce their profit on cheap labor from overseas. So it really isn't liberal, I guess. I guess it's liberal to talk about identity politics. But if that's all you talk about, which is really all Democrats talk about, you lose elections. Or you may lose them. And you certainly are going to lose many non-white Democrats who self-identify as moderate conservatives. So why do they vote? If they're non-white Democrats who are self-identified as moderate or conservative, why would they even vote Democrat at all? Because they see their economic issues as more closely tied to the Democrat Party. That the Democrats are going to be better on economic issues, except they're not anymore. Because they're not on health care. They're not on jobs. They're not on small business loans. They're not on trade. And they're not on war. So the Democrats lose the voters. They alienate more socially conservative voters. And they don't entice them back because their economic policies aren't good. I mean, is this hard? Is this complicated? Not at all. So as we head towards the close of the program, I do want to play a clip here from Jimmy and Dr. West, because I was critical of what Jimmy had to say here. I didn't like the way he presented it. And I'm not saying Jimmy's right and Dr. West is wrong, but I'm going to say this. I think that the argument that Jimmy makes is very important. And I don't think we can just simply disregard it or attribute it to some kind of white ignorance. Not going to call him a racist or privileged, but not attribute this to some sort of insensitivity on Jimmy's part. I'm not saying Jimmy isn't insensitive. A lot of times he is, I think. But his point, I think, is really, really important here. And I think it's more important. And at the time, I thought it was a good point. I didn't think it was meaningless. But now I really think it's something we have to maybe say, yeah, this is how we can win. This is what we have to do. So let me play, and I'll explain what I mean in a little bit. So here we go. Let's hopefully, I don't think you'll get the feedback. Let's hope it works.
So the point of running a third-party campaign is to offer an alternative to the two major parties, to bring together disaffected members of those parties, along with independents and others who feel alienated from the political system as it exists. And the best way to do this is by running on economic issues that unite us, but which neither major party is willing to address because they're both beholden to the same powerful corporate interests.
All right, I agree with everything he said there. I mean, I don't know what the point of a third party is. The point of a third party unite us on issues that, I guess, I mean, why not? So I agree with what Jimmy says there. I think it's kind of interesting that he's looking down at his paper like it's like this long question. I don't know that you need that much prep time, whatever. I mean, I don't know that you would need that much prep time to come up with a question that you can read it off. You don't need to read it. You can just say it off the cuff. I would think you could, but okay, he really, really, really wanted to read the question exactly the way he wrote it, so he did. And it is a fair question so far, which is, hey, or it's a fair point, I guess. He didn't ask a question yet. Your party should be, your third party run as a green, your alternative party run, let's call it an alternative party. I should stop saying third because there's more than three parties. But your alternative party run, I think, should be predicated on issues that are, that unite us, not divide us. They should be predicated on economic issues where we all have a similar, or where the working class anyway, which has, as we noted, has been leaving the Democrats in droves. So that's what you should be doing. That's what Jimmy's saying. And I can't argue at that point. Let's continue it.
Democratic Party long ago abandoned the working class in favor of beating the drum on cultural issues, and now that's all the Democrats have to run on. So if voters are looking for a party running on trans rights and calling Donald Trump and his supporters white supremacists, they can already vote for Democrats. The role of a third party is to focus not on the identity politics that divide us, but on core economic issues that unite us along class lines, like Christian Smalls did at Staten Island. Do you think he led with LGBTQ trans rights and white supremacy, or do you think he organized along class lines?
All right, so I'll stop Jimmy there. So when I first watched this, I was like, yeah, but no. Yes, you should focus on economic issues, Dr. West. And in fact, he does. I mean, it's not like he doesn't focus on them. And my position is you can walk and chew gum. You can do both. You can talk about identity and you can talk about class. But Jimmy's saying, don't even talk about identity at all. You're alienating people when you do that. That's what Jimmy's saying. And I was like recoiling. I was like, well, maybe, but still, it's really important. And it's really important to Dr. West. So he should talk about it because it's what's important to him. I haven't abandoned that position either. But given the fact that Democrats continue to lose voters of color, notwithstanding the fact that they do focus almost exclusively on identity politics when they're talking to voters of color. I mean, remember what Biden says: if you don't know who to vote for at this time, you're not black. You ain't black. Remember what, anytime you go to an AOC, whenever she's criticized, you're going after me because I'm a Latina woman. I mean, that's what Democrats do, and it's not working. It's not helping. It's not even keeping their vote with, in the party. They're losing votes. Given that fact, and given what Cohn said, many Hispanic voters, many African-American voters, churchgoers, they're not big on the identity stuff. They're not even big on like the systemic racism and white privilege stuff if they're black. And I know that based on, it's anecdotal. I know a lot of younger voters buy that, are into it. They want to hear it. It's important to them. I know a lot of younger voters want to hear about trans rights. But I'm not convinced at this point that the Democrats who talk about those issues aren't alienating just as many people or more than they're appealing to. And I say I know that as fact because, I talk to voters of color. I talk to African-American voters, and some of them, this doesn't grab them. They're like, no, they're just lip service. It's performative. It's not really addressing our core issues, which you heard from Barbara Cedric Fleming what they are: healthcare, jobs, small business administration, loans.
That's what we have to do. You have to organize, meet people where they are. So what is your plan to organize along class lines, or are you going to keep talking about white supremacy and all those identity politics, which are there, not from the ground up, from the top
Wes
down?
does talk a lot about
what is your plan to organize
class lines? Solidarity. That's a big issue. But Jimmy doesn't want him to talk about identity at all.
We have profound disagreements, brother. When I organize around white supremacy, I'm not making some utilitarian calculation. I'm speaking as a black man who comes out of a tradition that's been terrorized and traumatized by white elites. And that does not in any way mean it takes me away from class issues. Class issues are crucial. Class issues are fundamental. But it doesn't mean that I'm putting up with white supremacy. One of the problems is that you get too many folk who want to talk class, and can't say a mumbling word about white supremacy, police brutality. Can't say a mumbling word hardly. Or when they do say it, you call it identity politics as if it's not connected to class. I'm hitting these head on. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to strikes. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to greedy bosses. I'm standing with the workers when it comes to obsession with profits and the needs not in any way being satisfied. But I'll never for a minute be silent or not raising my voice in terms of vicious treatment of black people, indigenous people, gay brothers, lesbians, sisters, or trans. It's not an either or. And that's where you and I have a deep, profound disappointment. So if I see for you.
All right. So when I heard this, and as I hear it now, but when I first heard Dr. West say this, I was totally convinced. And I'm pretty much convinced now. And especially when he says, this is who I am. I'm not going to just simply look at partisan politics and say, okay, well, I will maximize my vote total if I don't talk about identity and I only talk about class and economics. He's saying that's not who I am. I'm also about, as an African-American man who's experienced racism and whose family, friends, people I care about, people I love have been victims of it, I'm going to talk about it. And I found that to be a very, and I still do, incredibly powerful, potent argument. But in the end, winning elections is how you make America a better place. And the data does suggest that, and this is something Nancy Pelosi once said when she was asked about Hillary Clinton, who talked a lot about how you have to elect a woman and it's a woman's turn and a woman this and the questioner asked her about that. And she said, well, I don't do that. She's like, I don't talk about my being a woman. I talk about politics. And it's true. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is a pure political animal. It's not personal for her. She just wants to win. She just wants to win. It's not about who she is. It's clear. She wants to win. And she won a lot. She didn't always win, and her policies were a lot of times harmful, and that's probably why she didn't win more. So you have to say to yourself at some point, if I need to win to make things better, I need to win to promote peace, I need to win to bring back good jobs to the Midwest, I need to win to make African American communities the vibrant, exciting, safe places that they can and should be, to make Native American, indigenous peoples, communities the safe, vibrant, exciting places they can be. You have to, at some point, say, how can I get where I need to go? Keep your eyes on the prize. So I do accept the point that Jimmy's making. Not that Dr. West only talks about identity politics, which is a lot of crap. He's always talking about class solidarity. But Jimmy's ultimate point, which is when you do talk about identity politics, you lose people. And I don't think that's clearly false. I don't think he's wrong there. And since he's not wrong, and since the goal is ultimately to win, this is something to bear in mind. All right, that's going to do it. I hope you all have a great weekend. I'll be back Monday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of Halitics. Please click subscribe. I want to get those numbers up. I absolutely, we got 1,000 subscribers. A long way to get there, but I'll get there. 1,000 subscribers, they'll start sending me little checks every few weeks or every month or so. All right, I'll be back on Monday.